Today we're going to take a closer look and compare two of the best value, affordable middleweight cruiser, the Honda Rebel 500, and the Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650. We'll start with the key specs. The Super Meteor 650 by Royal Enfield, which is made in India, produces 47 metric horsepower. The smaller Honda Rebel 500 makes just a bit less horsepower than the Super Meteor, around 46 horsepower. With a bigger displacement, the Super Meteor is able to churn out 52 Nm of torque, which is 9 Nm more than the Rebel. The Rebel 500's engine revs up quickly and higher than the Meteor's, putting out strong bottom-end torque and snappy, responsive acceleration without the jerkiness. While the Super Meteor produces a more flat, ultra-smooth, and linear torque curve with a broader power band, which is more flexible in many situations. Weight-wise, the Super Meteor is significantly heavier than the Rebel, with 241 kilograms of curb weight. The Super Meteor is 51 kilograms heavier. This made the Super Meteor a pretty stable and comfortable bike for long highway rides, but not as nimble as Rebel in the city. The lighter and more flickable Rebel is more of an urban cruiser that will comfortably swerve through traffic and avoid potholes. With almost identical horsepower output and a massive difference in weight, the Rebel obviously has a way better power-to-weight ratio, around 20% higher. In terms of price, both bikes are within the same price range, with the Royal Enfield being just £500 more expensive than the Rebel. While both bikes compete in the same market, Royal Enfield and Honda have different approaches to their bikes. Royal Enfield is after the old classic and elegance of the British cruiser look, with plenty of details, maintaining their long history and heritage in the Super Meteor design, with its classic teardrop tank, small round stoplight, aluminum brush and chrome finishes. While the Rebel has a more rebellious modern design, with sleek styling, more sharp angles, a large and square stoplight, and a blacked-out frame, engine and exhaust. Both bikes use parallel twin-engine layouts, but with different crank angles. The Honda Rebel is powered by a 180-degree crank parallel twin-engine, borrowed from the CBR 500R but retuned, to make more power and torque in the first half of the rev range. They also changed the gear ratio for smoother power delivery. The Super Meteor is powered by 270-degree parallel twin engines that are used in Royal Enfield's earlier 650s models, the Interceptor 650 and Continental GT 650. The Super Meteor displacement is 177 cc larger and comes with a short stroke layout, while the Rebel has an almost square bore and stroke ratio. The Rebel has a higher compression ratio and a more modern liquid-cooled engine, while the Super Meteor opted for a simple, old-fashioned air and oil cooling system. The Super Meteors rely on a single camshaft in each cylinder to control the opening and closing of the intake and exhaust valves, known as the SOHC setup, or single overhead cam. On the other hand, the Rebel uses the DOHC double overhead cam setup, where there are two dedicated camshafts, one to regulate the opening of the intake valves and the other to adjust the opening of the exhaust valves in each cylinder. SOHC engines have the advantage of being more simple with less maintenance cost, while the slightly more complex DOHC engines usually have a higher end torque and permit higher rev limits. For both bikes, power is passed through a 6-speed wet multiplate clutch transmission with a slipper clutch. The bulky Super Meteor comes with a larger fuel tank, exactly 4.5 liters more than the Rebel. Regardless of the displacement and the compression ratio, the claimed fuel consumption difference between the two is not much, with the Rebel being slightly more efficient. But if we look at the riding range, the Super Meteor's much larger tank clearly provides way more kilometers per fully filled tank. In terms of features and rider aids, both bikes only get basic features such as ABS brakes, and for the throttles, they are cable-operated with no ride-by-wire, traction control, or riding modes. Both the Rebel and Super Meteor come equipped with slipper clutches, and if we look at the cockpits, Super Meteor won this round with their free-to-use turn-by-turn tripper navigation system that is developed together with Google and links to the rider's smartphone via Bluetooth, included as standard. The Super Meteor's round instrument cluster, which combines an analog speedo with an inset LCD panel, looks much better than the Rebel. The Super Meteor is slightly more stretched with a 1.3 cm longer wheelbase and is much wider than the Rebel by 6.9 cm. Both have 16-inch wheels with the same profile for the rear, while for the front, Royal Enfield chose a bigger 19-inch wheel with skinnier tires for easier steering and better stability. The Super Meteor's higher seat height is more roomy and comfy for taller riders. It's higher than the Rebel by almost 5 centimeters, while the Rebel's low seat and sporty footpeg position might feel a bit more cramped and uncomfortable for riders above 180 centimeters. Both bikes have low and almost similar ground clearance heights, which promote a low center of gravity and better stability when cruising highways, not so much on bumpy roads though. The riding positions on both bikes are different. Rebel has more sporty mid-mounted pegs, while Super Meteor has a more relaxed forward foot control position with a less bent knee and a higher handlebar. The Rebel's handlebar is lower and farther, but both bikes have upright and comfortable riding position. Instead of using the Interceptor 650 or Continental GT 650 frame, Royal Enfield uses an all-new tubular spine steel frame that was especially designed for the Super Meteor, and the Rebel uses a steel trellis frame. For the front suspension, the Rebel gets the minimalist non-adjustable conventional telescopic fork with a 41mm diameter, while the Super Meteor gets a more costly but superior 43mm upside-down fork, which is unfortunately also non-adjustable. Both bikes have twin or dual rear shocks that can only be dialed for preload. Royal Enfield and Honda choose cost-effective cast aluminum wheels for their motorcycles. And for braking power, the Rebel relies on a twin-piston axial mount caliper with a 296mm single front disc, and the Super Meteor also uses a twin-piston axial mount caliper, but with a larger diameter 320mm single front disc. The brakes on both bikes feel just adequate and would definitely benefit from extra bite from the double front disc brake, especially for the heavier Super Meteor, which makes it harder to stop. So, which one should you pick? Well, it depends on your preferences and needs. Do you need an urban, compact cruiser for commuting in the city? Or a more classic retro cruiser with proper size and power that is comfortable for long highway cruises? But ultimately, I do recommend you test ride both bikes before buying, no matter what the reviewer or I say.